Hello and welcome to the curriculum preview for the fifth 6 weeks for ninth grade. Our focus this 6 weeks is on expository and persuasive text, writing a persuasive essay, and then our common novel Animal Farm. So things to consider this 6 weeks. We start with looking at what the standards require, and these are the standards that are new to our ninth graders this 6 weeks. Standard 9A asks students to summarize a text and distinguish between a summary that captures the main ideas and elements of a text and a critique that takes a position and expresses an opinion. Our ninth graders should be very familiar with summary as they've been working on summarization since basically first grade. They've written summaries. We have in middle school standard 19E, figure 19E, is summarizing, so they have had that, especially with informational text, and then just to summarize overall. However, we have not really looked at critiques, so this is a new concept to ninth graders, and they're not going to be familiar with that, so the structure and idea of a critique is really where we need to focus with this standard. We can assume they know summary. Standard 9B asks students to differentiate between opinions that are substantiated and unsubstantiated in text. Students are very good at opinions. They have many of them, but they don't always substantiate those opinions. And so they don't necessarily pick up on evidence in how an author can give multiple ways to substantiate an opinion. It doesn't necessarily have to be credible evidence. It could also be anecdotal evidence. It could be an experience. It could be things like that. So we need to help students be able to pick out where an author has substantiated their opinion and where they have not, and then look at the types of evidence that are used. Using a graphic organizer could be really helpful there for the students to pick out the opinion and then to pick out was it substantiated or unsubstantiated and how. Standard 9D asks students to synthesize and make logical connections between ideas and details in several texts that reflect a range of viewpoints. So students are going to read multiple texts that could be in persuasion, for something or against it. So let's look at recycling. You might have 2 texts that are for and 2 texts that are against. And so students will then look at how those are alike, how they're different, and then how those authors use text evidence to prove their points, and then how the students can compare and contrast and use text evidence as well. Standard 10A asks students to analyze the relevance, quality, and credibility of evidence given to support or oppose an argument for a specific audience. Students have been slightly introduced to the idea of credibility, but they haven't really looked at if it's good evidence. So not just credibility, did it come from a good source, but then also is it relevant and is it quality? Not all evidence provided is of equal weight. And so we need to help students be critical consumers of information. And one way they do that is by weighing out evidence. So they need to be able to kind of rank what's the most important evidence, what's the least important evidence, what happens if you give non-quality evidence or non-credible evidence. Do you have any, do people believe you? Do they think you know what you're saying? Standard 10B is analyze famous speeches for the rhetorical structures and devices used to convince the reader of the author's propositions. So this would be where a student would listen to or read a famous speech and then talk about the structure. How did the author organize their speech? How did the speaker organize their speech? What techniques did they use to make you buy into what they're saying? Standard 15D is produce a multimedia presentation. And it is, it could be a PowerPoint. It could be however you would like to do that. Standard 16 is write a persuasive essay. It's really important that we get this part down because they're tested next year in 10th grade on persuasion. Students need to be able to really take a stand and state a claim and stick to their claim. And if we can get that would be very helpful. 17B is on the subjunctive mood, and then they're going to review active and passive voice, which is 17AI. As always, we have to remember that our figure 19 skills overlay with everything we do because we don't teach anything in isolation from metacognition. We also have to remember that our standards call for continuous application of previously taught skills. A great example of this is in grammar. So the grammar tested on the 2016 EOC was all K through 8. There was not an additional ninth grade brand new skill addressed. So we have to remember when we think about our standards, it's not just our grade level, but it's also all the grade levels below. So we need to really target in on where the kids need some help. So in terms of pairing this 6 weeks, many of the standards deal with substantiation and credibility. So we need to tie these together. And the point of that would be to help students look at evidence with a critical eye. Not just that there is evidence and you can pick out that there's evidence, but is it valid? Is it strong? Is it good? And is it credible? Rhetorical structures and devices that we identify by analyzing the speeches can really be replicated in the writing of the persuasive essay. If we look at what an author or a speaker does, and then we try to imitate that as a writer, it makes our writing stronger. So let's look at some assessment. Standard 10A had students read this sentence from paragraph 3. One honest glance told me that only by unglamorous hard work over quite a few years would this gangling, unsure Arkansas girl be transformed into my dream of a fine actress. In this sentence, the author admits that. So we have to look at what the author is stating, and then kind of what evidence is she giving. Where's her credibility? What is she using to substantiate this? And so I think vocabulary is a huge issue here. I'm not sure students would know gangling or unsure, and so they would need to maybe look those words up. And we need to talk about what do you do when you hit a word you don't know. Another question standard 10 with figure 19B, which line demonstrates the author's realization that she may have overestimated her abilities? So it's kind of like, what is the author offering here to figure out that maybe she made a mistake? For standard 10A, it's a straight question. In paragraph 2, the author suggests what? So how does she know that? So resources that you have to help you this 6 weeks are the Texas Gateway. We've talked about this before, but remember you can search by grade and by content, and these are written by TEA for Texas standards. So there's specific resources for writing persuasively, and you can pick and choose from those. So if your students are having trouble with writing a thesis, there's a lesson for that. Or maybe they're having trouble with establishing a claim and sticking to it. There might be a lesson for that. But you can find lessons that can be used individually for a student need, a small group, if you have kids who are struggling with the same thing, or if you have whole group instruction because everybody needs it. So this would fit in with your blended playlists by being able to choose, based on your data, what the kids need, or based on your classroom observations. These 2 kids need thesis, but these 3 kids need claim. So this gives you a great resource. Also, here's a video on subjunctive mood. It's just kind of funny, and kids get it, and it's an English guy, so it makes me laugh. And here's a readwritethink.org lesson on making meaningful connections through annotation. I know annotation is something we've worked on with close reading, but this is also working on using connections to the text to go through multiple texts. And then here's a great resource for having 100 great speeches, and many of these have audio as well as the text with them, so students can listen as well as read along and make notes as they go. As always, I'm here to help you, so please let me know if there's anything you need. Thank you.